All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving into a story that's just, well, wild. It's practically a Hong Kong urban legend, the 1989 acid body murder case.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously, this thing, it always seems to land on those top 10 unsolved mysteries lists, and honestly, the sheer audacity of it all is something else.
It absolutely grabbed the city back then, really
Yeah,
shook people up. And it still has this kind of weird hold, you know.
totally.
You got to remember the vibe in Hong Kong in '89, the handover to China in '97 was coming, that anxiety was palpable, really thick in the air.
Right.
And then just before this, you had the Tiananmen Square incident, adding to this general feeling of, like uncertainty.
Yeah, pressure cooker.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So in that kind of environment, a crime this bizarre, this brutal, it was bound to just explode in the public consciousness.
Explode is definitely the word. This isn't your typical straightforward murder case. We're talking a really messed up love triangle.
Mm-hmm.
A murder so horrific it's hard to even picture. And then this attempt to make the evidence just disappear.
Using chemicals.
Strong chemicals.
Very strong. So our victim, Wong Tzu-Kwan, she was 28, a first-class flight attendant for Cathay Pacific, which, adds this layer of glamour
Right, that image.
that takes a seriously dark turn. Then we have the accused. First, Wong Tai-wai, American Chinese described as, well, a bit of a womanizer.
That's putting it mildly, maybe.
Apparently had multiple girlfriends. And then there was Yu Ling, who was his girlfriend living with him at the time.
So our mission today, wading through this really awful situation, is to try and figure out what actually happened.
Yeah.
And understand why this case still resonates so much in Hong Kong society, and maybe surprisingly explore why the people involved, despite the whole, acid thing.
Which is hard to get past.
It is, but why they don't really fit the profile of your typical serial killer.
Okay, let's start unpacking this whole mess, starting with the victim, Wong Tzu-Kwan.
Right, Wong Tzu-Kwan, the flight attendant. The sources really emphasize that detail, don't they?
They do. It's significant. It's like this symbol of, I don't know, aspiration, glamour, jet setting.
Yeah.
And it just gets violently torn apart. It definitely ramped up public interest.
Oh, for sure. That feeling of injustice.
Yeah, this bright light just snuffed out in such a horrible way. We know she left home on May 6th, 1989. There was this phone call. Sounds like it was pretty emotional.
Mm.
And then, just like that, she was gone. Never seen alive again.
That image of glamour, it does tend to amplify the reaction in cases like these. There's maybe a stronger sense of violation when someone who seems to have it all becomes a victim of such extreme violence.
Makes sense.
Now let's get into the relationships. This tangled web, Wong Tai-wai, this ladies' man, as you said, sounds like he was juggling quite a few relationships. He was renting this village house out in Shatin, Sintin Hang Village, a place that would become Notorious.
Yeah.
And living there with him was Yu Ling, his girlfriend at the time.
And the sources, they don't really hold back on how the public saw Wong Tai-wai. The term sign scumbag gets used a lot.
Right, John.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who doesn't know Cantonese, that's not just like, oh, he's a bad boyfriend. It's much stronger. It implies manipulation, disrespect.
Really reprehensible behavior towards women.
Exactly. And that label, it just stuck to him immediately. It really colored how everyone saw his role in this whole thing right from the start.
That immediate condemnation is interesting, isn't it? It almost suggests this societal need to quickly find a villain, maybe especially when times feel uncertain more broadly.
Maybe short-circuited things a bit.
Perhaps. Perhaps it prevented a more nuanced look at the complex dynamics that were clearly at play. Now, the spark. What set this whole nightmare off seems like it was classic jealousy.
Always is, isn't it?
Often. Yu Ling, his current girlfriend, was apparently not happy about Wong Tai-wai still being involved with Wong Tzu-Kwan.
Understandable, I guess.
And this tension, it just boiled over on the evening of May 6th. Yu Ling called Wong Tzu-Kwan. And it doesn't sound like it was a friendly chat.
Oh, I bet not. I'm picturing fireworks over the phone lines. The sources kind of suggest the call was meant to provoke a confrontation.
Seems likely.
And, well, mission accomplished. Wong Tzu-Kwan went over to Wong Tai-wai's place. And things went from bad to worse, like incredibly fast.
0 to 60.
Totally. An argument started between the two women. It gave physical. And when Wong Tai-wai stepped in, he apparently sided with Yu Ling and broke up with Wong Tzu-Kwan right then and there.
Ouch. That final rejection, that seems to be the tipping point.
Yeah.
Sources suggest Wong Tzu-Kwan then lashed out attacked Yuling, and that's when it turned deadly. Wang Taiwai and Yuling, acting together, killed Wang Ziquan.
It's chilling.
What's interesting, though, is the indication that this wasn't maybe a cold-blooded, planned murder. It seems more like a sudden, violent escalation.
An argument gone horribly wrong.
Exactly, but the subsequent attempt to dissolve the body, that suggests something much more calculated, a chilling decision made after the fact.
Calculated and chilling is putting it mildly. Okay, fast forward just 2 days. May 8th. Neighbors start complaining about this absolutely horrific smell.
Unbearable, apparently.
And the police trace it right back to Wang Taiwai's rental house in Shatin. What they found in the third-floor bathroom is pure horror movie stuff. Big iron box.
Yeah.
And inside, severely decomposed female remains and a human skull.
Yeah.
No words.
And the state of those remains was particularly awful. The body had been dismembered, the head was severed, and they tried to dissolve it all using chemical solvents, probably hydrochloric acid.
Which is nasty stuff.
Incredibly corrosive. It can dissolve organic matter, gives you a sense of just how desperate and, frankly, horrific their attempt to get rid of the evidence was. This method, it was unheard of in Hong Kong then.
Totally unprecedented.
Which is a huge part of why this is called a strange case. It caused massive problems for forensics trying to identify the victim, collect evidence. Imagine being the first officers on that scene.
I can't. Seriously, talk about a hazardous situation. That bizarre, almost clumsy attempt at chemical disposal really sealed this case as something truly out there in the public imagination.
Definitely. So the investigation starts. Wang Taiwai and Yuling are arrested. Initially, they deny everything about the murder.
Right, dumb.
Pretty much. They only admit to having a small amount of cocaine in the apartment, trying to deflect.
Minor leagues compared to murder.
Right. But then a crucial tip came in from someone in Shatin Village. The police follow up, and Wang Taiwai confesses first. But in his version, he points the finger right at Yuling.
Throws her under the bus.
Seems like it. Then Yuling confesses too, admits her involvement. So at first it looks like, okay, grim, but maybe straightforward now.
But nothing about this case was straightforward, was it? The trial in August 1990. Things went sideways fast.
Very fast.
Both Wang Taiwai and Yuling were found guilty. Murder and preventing the lawful burial of a body. And they both got the death sentence.
Which was serious, even though Hong Kong hadn't actually executed anyone for years and later abolished it entirely. It showed how severely the court viewed the crime.
Absolutely. But, that wasn't the end. They appealed. And surprisingly, they won.
Yeah, successful appeal, which meant a retrial. That happened in August 1992, and this is where the story takes another massive twist.
Just when you think it can't get weirder.
Yuling completely changes her testimony, flips the script entirely. She claims she alone was responsible for the manslaughter, not murder, of Wang Ziquan.
Whoa.
And that Wang Taiwai had absolutely nothing to do with the actual killing itself.
Taking the fall.
Completely.
That's what it looked like, a bombshell, truly.
You're not kidding. And the final verdicts. They reflected this massive shift. Yuling gets convicted of manslaughter, sentenced to just 2 years.
And since she'd already served a lot of time waiting for trials?
She walked free pretty quickly, right? 1994.
That's right. Released in 1994. And Wang Taiwai, acquitted of murder?
Acquitted,
Yeah.
after the initial death sentence. Acquitted of murder. He was convicted of preventing the lawful burial of the deceased. But the sentence for that was effectively time served, so he was released immediately, right from court.
Can you even imagine the public reaction? The collective gasp across Hong Kong must have been deafening.
Oh, it was massive outrage. Deep skepticism about the whole justice system. The idea that someone seemingly so involved in something so brutal could just walk away from a murder charge. It was deeply unsettling for many people.
And Yuling suddenly taking all the blame. That must have seemed suspicious.
Raised huge red flags. Was she forced, manipulated, some kind of twisted loyalty? It just didn't sit right with the public.
So even though he was convicted of the burial charge.
Right, which still acknowledged his role in the aftermath, even if not the killing itself, according to that verdict. But it wasn't murder.
And then there's that other really weird part that fueled the public distrust even more.
Ah, yes. The social worker.
Right. Apparently, while he was waiting for the retrial, Wang Taiwai somehow completely charmed this female social worker, Sally.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
She was so convinced he was innocent, she actually got down on her knees in court, begging for leniency for him.
You really can't make this stuff up.
It just cemented this public image of Wong Kai-wei as this master manipulator, someone who could just twist women around his finger.
Exactly. In this case, it really throws that tension into sharp relief, doesn't it? Between the strict procedures of the law, the rules of evidence, appeals.
And what people feel is justice, their gut feeling.
Precisely. When the outcome feels so disconnected from what the public perceives as right and wrong, it inevitably damages trust in the system. Wong Tai-wei's apparent ability to manipulate first Yu Ling, then this social worker that became a huge focus of public anger. Maybe even more than the legal technicalities.
This whole saga just left this deep scar on Hong Kong society, especially in the late 80s, early 90s. The media went into a frenzy.
Understandable.
And the gruesome details, plus this really toxic love story. It created this genuinely frightening atmosphere across the city. It wasn't just another crime. It felt like a violation of something fundamental.
It really did. The sheer brutality and that unheard-of disposal method definitely created that terrifying atmosphere. It tapped into some deep fears, I think.
Yeah, the macabre, the unknown.
And like we said, even though there were arrests, trials, this case is still firmly lodged as one of Hong Kong's top 10 unsolved mysteries.
Because the trial outcome felt so unsatisfying.
Unresolved.
Exactly. That controversial outcome adds this whole other layer to the unsolved feeling, the sense that the full truth never really emerged, that justice wasn't fully served.
And it's not like it's faded away. It keeps popping up. There was that movie in '93, Legal Innocence. Kai.
Yeah, Dissolving Corpse, strange case. Even got a Hong Kong Film Award nomination.
Which just shows how much this story grabbed the public imagination and held on.
Absolutely. And even today, decades on, you find podcasts like ours, YouTube deep dives, articles, still picking it apart.
And sometimes you even hear those whispers about ghosts at the crime scene.
Right, the alleged paranormal stuff, which is probably just sensationalism, but it adds to the whole eerie mystique. Yeah. But while all these retellings keep the memory alive, you have to wonder if sometimes they lean a bit too much into the gore, maybe overshadow the real human cost.
That's a fair point. And all this talk of shocking details, dissolving bodies, it might make you think, okay, this sounds like serial killer territory.
Right, your mind jumps there.
But let's actually dig into why Wong Tai-wei and Yu Ling don't really fit that profile.
Okay, yeah, let's break that down. Because when you hear acid bath, you might picture some Hannibal Lecter type.
Exactly. But we need to look at the definitions. Criminologically, serial murder usually means, what, 3 or more killings?
Yeah, spread out over time, more than a month, with those cooling down periods in between.
Right. The FBI has a slightly broader definition, 2 or more killings, separate events, same offender. But even with that...
This case had one victim, just Wong Sequan.
One victim. Singular. And then you look at the typical traits we associate with serial killers.
Like lack of empathy, that creepy mask of sanity thing.
Often a history of childhood trauma, maybe. And those specific, often disturbing motives, thrill-seeking, power, control, sexual gratification.
A lot of that just doesn't seem to fit Wong Tai-wei and Yu Ling, based on what we know. Serial killing is about a pattern of offending, driven by deep psychological stuff.
That pattern is crucial. So let's compare. We've got one victim here. The motivation seems to be jealousy, interpersonal conflict within this very specific volatile situation.
Not random strangers, not fulfilling some dark fantasy.
Exactly. And there's no evidence of those cooling down periods. It was one horrific wait and its immediate aftermath.
Right. A single explosion, not a series of attacks over time. And critically, the victim wasn't a stranger.
No, Wong Sequan knew both Wong Tai-wei and Yu Ling intimately. Serial killers usually target strangers or types of people they don't know personally.
Big difference.
Huge. Yeah, and then if we try to look at their psychology, keeping in mind we only have limited info, Wong Tai-wei was clearly manipulative.
Definitely seemed good at getting people to do things. Yu Ling, the social worker.
Right. And maybe he lacked remorse. But that alone doesn't make someone a serial killer. That requires a much more complex, often deeply disturbed mindset, maybe sexual deviancy, compulsive urges to kill again and again. His actions seem more opportunistic.
Like solving an immediate problem, however brutally, and then trying to cover his tracks.
Yeah.
Self-preservation.
Things more like that. And Yu Ling, her actions, especially taking the blame, that suggests maybe intense dependency, fear, perhaps some kind of warped loyalty.
Not the predatory mindset you associate with serial killers.
Not at all. So yes, Wong Tai-wei displayed some, let's say, antisocial traits, but they played out in this one, incredibly brutal crime and its cover-up.
not a repetitive pattern driven by some internal compulsion.
Exactly. The crime was highly specific to that relationship, that situation.
Okay, so maybe laying it out visually helps. Let's compare side by side in a table for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Characteristic. Number of victims. Wong and Yu case. 1. Typical serial killer. 2, 3 or more separate events.
Characteristic. Time span. Wong and Yu case. Single event. Typical serial killer. Over weeks, months, years with cooling down periods.
Characteristic. Primary motivation. Wong and Yu case. Jealousy, love triangle conflict. Typical serial killer. Psychological gratification, thrill, power, sex, etc. Maybe anger, money.
Characteristic. Victim selection. Wong and Yu case. Known individual, specific target. Typical serial killer. Often strangers, vulnerable people, or a specific type.
Characteristic. Relationship to victim. Wong and Yu case. Intimate partner or rival. Typical serial killer. Primarily strangers.
Characteristic. Cooling down period. Wong and Yu case. Not applicable, single event. Typical serial killer. Yes, distinct periods between murders.
Characteristic. Primary psychological traits. Wong and Yu case. Wong seems manipulative, womanizing. Yu may be dependent or coerced. Typical serial killer. Often psychopathy, no empathy, sadism, sexual deviancy, need for control.
And finally, characteristic. Driving force. Wong and Yu case. Resolving immediate conflict, self-preservation. Typical serial killer. Often compulsive, ritualistic, driven by internal psychological needs.
So yeah, looking at it like that, the differences are pretty stark.
They really are. While the method, the acid disposal, was exceptionally cruel and really disturbing, the underlying dynamics seem rooted in that specific interpersonal conflict that just tragically spiraled out of control. It's not the pattern we see in serial murder.
So wrapping this up, the 1989 acid body murder case. It remains infamous in Hong Kong for so many reasons. That incredibly shocking body disposal method.
Unforgettable in the worst way.
That messy, ultimately deadly love triangle. And the legal outcome that left so many people just baffled and angry.
Yeah, it raises all these uncomfortable questions that still linger. About Wong Tai-wai's real level of guilt, about why Yu Ling took the fall.
It definitely made people question the justice system, didn't it? Fairness, the impact of manipulation, the gap between legal rulings and what feels like justice.
Absolutely. And its continued life in popular culture shows how much it gripped the public imagination. It's like this dark cautionary tale, but also a source of morbid curiosity.
But at the core, despite the absolute horror, it seems this was fundamentally a homicide born from intense personal conflict.
Right. Not the work of serial killers, whose patterns, motives, and victim choices are typically very different.
It really makes you think, though, about the lasting shadow these extreme cases cast on how we see justice, how we understand relationships pushed to the breaking point.
It does. What does it say about us as a society when a crime this horrific gets etched so deeply into collective memory? And what are the ethics of a legal system that can produce an outcome so debated, so controversial? Definitely leaves you with a lot to chew on.